You probably think the invisibility cloak is Harry's most powerful piece of gear, right? Well, you'd actually be wrong though. In the movies at least, it's the heavy coat of plot armor he wears in the battle. If Book Harry ever watched his movie counterpart in action, he'd be absolutely furious. Movie Harry gets away with just about everything. Meanwhile, Book Harry bleeds for his wins. Here's the thing though. Movie Harry wins on a combination of luck and a little help from his friends. Book Harry succeeds because he's willing to suffer for the people around him. I mean, think about how they handle basic problems. In Goblet of Fire, when the Triwizard Tournament gets announced, both Harrys wind up getting entered illegally, but it's what happens next that shows the difference. Book Harry freaks out. He doesn't know how his name got in the Goblet of Fire. He thinks someone's trying to kill him. I mean, he's terrified. He practices constantly, and he even starts to fight with his friends. But Movie Harry? He shows up, he does his tasks, and he just wins. Quickly. Maybe he knows that the movie needs to wrap things up in 2 hours. It must be nice to solve your problems in movie montage form. Alas, this is a luxury that Book Harry never receives. But don't worry though, we aren't here to spoil anyone's fun. You don't even have to hate Movie Harry. His book persona will do that for you. Harry is not uniquely talented in almost any way, really. I mean, we know he can fly well, but that's just a hobby. It doesn't help him beat Voldemort. We also know that he's magically protected from being killed by the Dark Lord, and, well, that's great, but it's also not because of anything he did. It's his mother who died to give him that power.
But, alright, we can admit it. This is the original Harry Potter plot armor that we're talking about here, and it does come from the books, so you can't really blame Movie Harry for this one. But here's what makes the guy that we meet in the pages so special, though, because no matter how many times he gets hit, he always ends up getting back up.
We know that he's afraid pretty much all the time, and still, it never stops him from doing the right thing. Even so, there's still an unrealistic set of circumstances that does help him get his wins. I mean, he survives Book 1 thanks to that magical gift he inherited from his mother. He survives Book 2 because a bird throws him a magic sword that helps him win the day, and he survives Book 3 because the deranged serial killer villain, which perfect choice for a kid's book, by the way, turns out to be a good guy. I mean, all Harry has to do is survive an unarmed rat. He does solve a few bigger problems in that book, but it's with the help of time travel. We could go on, but I think you get the idea by now. No matter which version of Harry you're dealing with, there's bound to be a decent bit of luck involved. But the difference is that Book Harry also has heaping quantities of heart. I mean, sure, he will always win in the end. After all, the series is named after him, but he takes a lot of hits along the way. But these hits are more important than you might have thought, because it's not just the scars that matter, it's how Harry processes them. First of all, it's important to understand that Book Harry and Movie Harry actually remain pretty similar for the first half of the series. Up until Goblet of Fire, the books are mostly adapted pretty well by the movies. It's only once we get into the later titles and the page lengths creep up that a lot of things end up getting cut. This is a bit unfortunate because it's actually right at this point where the plot starts getting really good. Harry starts dealing with extremely adult problems as a child, and the books spend hundreds of pages allowing us to feel that experience from his point of view. The movies hit the same plot beats, but it's so quickly that the stakes are just glossed over. Like, let's take Order of the Phoenix as an example. It takes place right after Goblet of Fire, and if you remember, Goblet of Fire is kind of the Empire Strikes Back of the Harry Potter world. Voldemort rises from the dead, and Harry has to watch a friend die right in front of him, and we, the audience, along with our protagonist, lose a bit of innocence in the bargain. But the infuriating thing, though, is that all of this happens for nothing, and we learn that in Order of the Phoenix. Now, the story begins with Harry back home with the Dursleys. He's out with his cousin Dudley when Dementors attack very suddenly. He defends himself and his cousin, and he nearly gets expelled from school from it. It's immediate that we understand what kind of situation we're dealing with here. The wizarding world is just not fair. It's not going to take Harry seriously, and the entire deck is stacked against him. And throughout the book, that theme continues. Umbridge comes to school, and she tortures children, and she even gets Dumbledore fired. And all the while, Harry worries in private about the rise of Voldemort. It's a beautiful and tragic entry in the series because it captures the best elements of the theme so well. I mean, he's just a kid trying to do things most adults couldn't do. and that arrangement leads him to making an impulsive and ultimately very costly mistake. He falls straight into Voldemort's trap, and he goes to the Ministry of Magic, and the only family he has left in the world dies because of it. And well, all of this happens in the movie too, right? I mean, in the Order of the Phoenix book version, we are drenched in all the emotions that come with the story. What does it feel like to have your worst nightmare come true and no one believes you? What does it feel like to face drastically unfair circumstances? Unfortunately though, it's in this territory where the movies kind of start to fall off, and it's not in the ways you might think. The 8th and final Harry Potter film ends just like the book, with the Battle of Hogwarts, and arguably, this is the most famous and saddest sequence in the entire series. By the time all the action is over, characters we love are literally stacked as bodies on the ground. Harry's gone out to the Forbidden Forest, accepting his death, and because there's still some story left, we worry that there's more horror to come. This scene represents what is one of the biggest departures between the books and the films. Now, in the book, Harry has a supernatural conversation with Dumbledore, or maybe it's just a dream. You never really know for sure. Either way, he springs up, and while his friends are watching, he immediately begins a final confrontation with Voldemort. And one more big battle breaks out, but this time, we actually get to watch the good guys win. Neville cuts the head off of Nagini, Molly Weasley kills Bellatrix Lestrange, and that might be one of the most satisfying moments of the entire series. And Harry, he finally gets the time with the man who killed his family and ruined his life. Now, in the books, the action is actually relatively compact. There's some kind of confusing wand math that gets kicked around there, and we have to figure out who's actually in control of the Elder Wand. But mostly, it's a simple, pure contest between good and evil. Harry no longer has his protection, and likewise, Voldemort has no Horcruxes left. It's just them. Bad versus good. Who's gonna win? It's kind of a beautiful question. And it's also one that the movie decides to take a big dump on. Because right when the action heats up, Harry and Voldemort in the film get into a scrappy kicking and punching match that would just embarrass a third grader. The action eventually winds up with them in one of the towers, and it's here where Harry says one of the most regrettable lines in the whole film series.
Come on, Tom. Let's finish this the way we started.
And then they jump off, kicking, punching, and probably hair-pulling their way back down to the ground. And when Harry finally does get the final blow, Voldemort fades away into a cloud of gray ash. Everything about the fight is just off. The mechanics are just corny and ridiculous, and the payoff is unsatisfying and ultimately just feels unearned. In the books, Voldemort doesn't just disappear, he flops down dead. And there's a reason for that, because the message is finally crystallized. He's just a man, and Harry's just a boy. He's not some action star who makes quips and jumps out of windows. He's just you, and he's just me. He's the everyman that's gone on this hero's journey and come back on the other side. Better, a little bit wiser, and certainly roughed up. There are endless moments like this in the books and in the movies. We've already talked about the Goblet of Fire, but I haven't even talked about Harry's constant anxiety. And that's an interesting part of Harry's personality that's just never quite captured in the movies. There are so many moments throughout the series where he's just furious. In Book 3, he literally wants to kill Sirius because he thinks it's his fault that Voldemort murdered his parents. And in Book 5, he's just angry all the time. I mean, he was almost murdered the year before. He watched a friend die in front of him, and no one believes his story because they're all too afraid. But those complex human emotions just don't present quite as well on the screen for some reason. And then there are the smaller differences. For example, there's an entire subplot in Goblet of Fire regarding a retired Quidditch superstar named Ludo Bagman. Now look, we get it. When you have about 2 hours to tell a very big story, cutting a guy like Ludo just makes sense. But it not only cheats us of some very interesting character development, like how he's a con artist, but it also changes the direction of the story. In the book, Ludo cheats the Weasley twins out of money, giving them leprechaun gold that disappears shortly after they receive it. Because of this, Harry decides to give them his Triwizard Cup winnings as startup money for their joke shop. When you compress that much plot into a compact time frame, you end up losing a lot of detail, and over the course of 8 movies, those lost details add up to a very different version of Harry. Okay, so we've kicked the issue around a fair bit at this point. Book Harry has more depth than movie Harry, that's true, but it's also not the fairest comparison in the world. Books have thousands of pages to work with, and the Harry Potter series is about 4,000 pages depending on the edition. Meanwhile, the movies only have a combined runtime of just under 20 hours. And in case you're wondering, that's less than the length of the entire audiobook for Goblet of Fire. Of course, the books can capture a lot more nuance and emotion than the films. Who knows, maybe Book Harry would be able to take that into consideration as he judges his film counterpart. Just the same though, it does testify to the difficulty of adapting a story. One of the things that makes books so special is that they allow you to step inside someone else's head. You get to feel their feelings, really understand what it's like to be in an unimaginable situation. It takes far more than 20 hours of story to save the world from a relentless, almost immortal evil. The movies arguably do a pretty good job of working with what they've got. The deck is just unfortunately stacked against them. Storytelling on screen is changing all the time. You've probably heard by now that the series is about to get an HBO glow-up. Approximately 10 years of Harry Potter television is coming our way. Loyal fans everywhere are starting to worry about what that will look like. Will the story change? Will the new actors live up to the originals? Worthy concerns to be sure, but still, why not try to find the good in the situation? We're getting 7 whole seasons, approximately 10 episodes each. We're dealing with more than twice the screen time of the original series minimum. That's a lot of space to let Harry exist as a convincing person. It's good to remember that relatability is ultimately Harry's strongest quality. Unfortunately, it's also one that gets lost in the movies. I mean, we're supposed to be able to see ourselves as him. For that reason, he actually comes across a little bland. I mean, he's not super funny, his interests are a bit simple, and if you really pay attention to his strength as a wizard, you'll probably wind up thinking, okay, if I was at Hogwarts, I could probably do as well as Harry. He's just got C student energy. So with the extended runtime, we actually have the opportunity to suffer alongside Harry, and that's the whole power of the story. At the risk of getting a little complicated, Harry Potter perfectly embodies the concept of the monomyth. Now, if you didn't know, that's Joseph Campbell's theory on story structure. Basically, it's a long series of steps that any good hero must take to grow as a person and ultimately reach their goal. Acts of heroics are part of the recipe, but they aren't the only part. Self-doubt, problem avoidance, and failure are all key components to the mix as well, because those are the story elements that we, the audience, can relate to the most. Like, picture this. How would you feel if an evil man who killed your parents and tried to murder you came back to life? But wait, there's more. He did it by tying you up to his father's tombstone and killing your friend in front of you. And then, by some miracle, you escaped. Then, you were almost murdered by your favorite teacher. And there's still more, because for an entire year after that, no one believes you. At the end of the day, though, it's not just the obstacles that are important, it's how they make a person feel. Kids have a vague sense that the world is not completely fair, and stories like Harry Potter bring that idea home. Questions like, what do you do in the face of fear? You would persist. How do you handle your anxiety? With help from your friends and a commitment to perseverance. And when do you do what is right? Always. And these are the themes that Harry Potter wrestles with. Of course, the books handle them better. The movies never even had a chance, but don't hold it against movie Harry. Be grateful for the guy in the books, and let's be hopeful that we will soon meet a worthwhile replacement on the small screen. Can't get enough Harry Potter? Tune into our next video. The scene that solved the Professor Snape paradox.